ELROND has fallen nearly 20% in the last few days, but should we be concerned? In this video, we're going to dive into the technical analysis on ELROND and specifically the price action of eGold. We're going to take a look at the weekly, daily, and hourly charts, and of course, take a look at the advice dashboard to see if there is anything that we should be concerned about. Guys, as we get into this video, if you find it useful and informative, hit the like button. I really do appreciate that. If you are new, make sure you subscribe, tap the bell, select all notifications, and in doing so, you won't miss another update. Right, let's dive into this technical analysis on ELROND. So we're going to start things off, guys, with the weekly chart here. And we'll talk about the good progress that we had seen at the beginning of the bull run, really coming into its own in the latter part of 2020. We had seen 4,000% gains from as late as October 2020 up to a peak of around April. Okay, so again, a pretty significant push to the upside. Not as many percentage gains as some of the other projects that we talk about on the channel, but pretty good gains nonetheless. Much better than things like Bitcoin, which was about 1,500 during the same period. Overall, after the 4,000 gains were made, we did see a bit of a pull back. And again, this was in line with Bitcoin pulling back significantly, and we found some interesting low points. Now, when we take our high and we take our low, that actually allows us to predict out where things are going to go for the second half of this bull run. Okay, and this is where we start to see that recovery really come in. Okay, so right now everything's looking pretty good here, and we have actually set a new all-time high, and then we started to pull back. We're about 231% from where we think things are likely to end up by the end of the bull run, and we'll get into that on the hourly in a moment. So what we're going to do is we're just going to have a look at the stochastic. We can see that we were overbought during this first push to the upside. We were then coming down a little bit here, and we were able to see that we were in the oversold area during this correction wave. Now, this correction down here was actually oversold for quite some time, for a couple of months or so. Then we went and pushed all the way back up into the overbought area, and very, very quickly after having a bit of a recovery here. And again, we can be up here for several months, so it's good to see that we're finally overbought, and we can be up here for a while as we continue the push to the upside and go after our additional 230% in gains. Overall, the structure of the weekly chart here is looking pretty good. There's nothing to be concerned with. In theory, there are actually 5 impulse waves if we had more data. There's one that comes here. This is your second wave. This would have been your third. That's your fourth, and we are in our fifth. Okay, so we kind of know what the structures are looking like. Many of these altcoins have formed the same pattern, so we know that this is kind of what's going on here. If this was the high of wave 1, for example, and this was the low of wave 2, wave 4 didn't cross 1, so we know that's valid, and in theory, everything else should then be looking at the 5th wave and the rules that are aligned to it. So overall, everything's looking pretty good on the structural side for ELROND here on the weekly. So let's jump down into our daily and take a look at what's going on here. This is where we'll talk about that price expectation of where things are going. So from the current position, that 231% takes us up to $870. Okay, so that is where we see the kind of bull run ending for eGold on this particular video. Now, ultimately, I think eGold's going to have a really good push to the upside, and its potential does actually outweigh where it's going. But I think this is the theoretical cap from a technical point of view, and this is based on the performance that we've been seeing, right? The high of this area here and the low of this area. This is where this price prediction comes from. So based on current performance, this is where technically we think it's likely to end. Okay, so about 230%. $870. Now, what you can see is the most recent price action, and why actually what we've seen happen so far is actually pretty good, is we went up and we pushed up into a new all-time high after getting past our 786. Now, that is actually relatively quick, right? Because we're battling up here for a while. We had the pullback, and then we launched our way up into new all-time high. Okay, and what we've done here is we found resistance at the previous high. We pushed up halfway towards our target at the 1.618, and then we pulled back and we back tested on the previous highs. Now we know that that's a really strong support line just here, and we can continue that growth to the upside. So although it can be frustrating to see a 20% pullback, it's pretty standard in the crypto space for back testing on an area of significance. So right now that's actually pretty good, and that should hopefully allow us to then grow up towards our 1.618 area, or $365, which is the first priced target. Okay, so good motions of recovery have been made so far, and I think we're going to see a lot more to come still. Now, we are overbought on the daily stochastic, but again, this is an area that we can be overbought for quite some time. Not as long as we can see with our weekly, but nonetheless, it doesn't take a lot to actually remove the momentum and bring us down into an oversold area. So although we are pulling back a little bit right now in this 20% pullback, the expectation will be to push up still and stay in this overbought area before actually losing the momentum a little bit. So overall, nothing majorly wrong with our structure here. Everything's lining up quite nicely. We could potentially just trade sideways here for a moment or two before we do go up to the next level, but it does look like we are likely to set a new all-time highs really soon. Overall, nothing to really report majorly wrong with the daily, so let's jump into the 𝗲𝗏 dashboard. For those who do not know, 𝗲𝗏.io is using artificial intelligence and machine learning to help us understand the underlying data behind a cryptocurrency. The underlying value is absolutely critical, as it helps us understand whether or not a cryptocurrency is worth investing in or not. Now, for ELROND EGLD, it is an A2 rating, the second best rating overall that you can get on this particular protocol or platform. And basically here we can break this down a little bit lower. We can see the 𝗕𝗏𝗃 ratio is an A2 rating, so problems with liquidity there aren't any. It's very, very good. No problems to report there. The fear and greed index is A2. So again, it's very greedy. So if you think about what usually happens when things are extremely greedy, you start to see people FOMOing in, chasing the green candles, but you also see experienced traders take some profits on that journey. So again, it's good to see that we are up in the A2 rating for the fear and greed index. The Sharpe ratio, A2, again, Sharpe ratio being your risk reward ratio, and performing very well, above the 50-day average quite significantly, so nothing to report wrong there. And the moving averages, A2 ratings, nothing wrong with that either, and the profitability being an A1, the best profitability that the platform can give. So overall, there are absolutely no problems with the data that sits behind ELROND and EGLD here. So outside of the charts, this is actually giving us a little bit more insight into what is going on with ELROND, and there's nothing to report that's wrong with ELROND and the underlying data that the artificial intelligence and machine learning is picking up. So overall, very good stuff is to kind of come out of this. So guys, if you're not familiar, there is a link in the description below. Sign up, it is free. You'll be able to utilize this for your cryptocurrencies, and it is very, very powerful stuff. So check it out. Right, let's get back into our charts here. What we'll do is we'll jump down into our hourly, and this is where we start to see some more interesting moves that have been going on and some very frustrating ones, but again, something that we can see as needed in the space. Now, here we can see a good swing to the upside, the break to the upside where we set the all-time high, and then I think Bitcoin pulled us back down, right? And we saw this pull back here a little bit. Now, Bitcoin has actually started to get a recovery. We saw that yesterday, so we started to see a bit more of a push back to the upside. Now, we obviously found resistance, okay? So we had resistance here, 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 a breakthrough event here. We then found more resistance, we turned it into more resistance and so forth. So overall, right now, what you've got is an area of resistance that we need to get through. Now, as we approach this downward trend line again, we are overbought. So the expectation at this point would be to get rejected from this downward trend one last time, or maybe even a couple more times as we get tighter and tighter into a triangular wedge. So what we'll look for here is to basically pull this down to these lower areas. Let me just pull that down into this one here. Okay, so what you end up with here is a scenario where we might get rejected, we find the support, we get rejected, we find the support, and then we get the break. Okay, so what we are looking for is a big kind of move to the upside, but we do need to correct our stochastic for that to happen, right? So we'll pull back a little bit, and it doesn't have to be a huge price drop, right? We are talking about 265 and a theoretical low of 244, but we might actually just do something like this and then break, right? Because it could just literally be a small pullback that we see and then an absolute tear to the upside overall. And this is something we see quite a bit with things like Polkadot or VeChain. They create these triangular wedges, and you might expect the whole wedge to kind of play out, but instead what you get is this tap and then you're up to the upside straight away. And so right now, just knowing that we need to lose that momentum, it can happen within a very small space on our chart. We lose all the momentum and then we take a nice push to the upside there. So although it can look quite scary on the smaller time frames, you see these things forming. Overall, they are not overly that concerning when we can see that's what's happened in the past. Overall, though, our upward trend was invalidated, so that was very frustrating for us. We ideally wanted to get that bounce from there, but nonetheless, everything is working nicely. The weekly and the daily charts are aligning nicely. There's nothing wrong with those structures. There's a little bit of volatility here on the smaller time frames, but if we are ever in doubt, we zoom out and we pay attention to the bigger picture. Where are we going in line with our expectations of our weekly chart, with our daily chart, etc. Everything's looking pretty good, and we have a good swing to the upside where we see that 231% coming in. So it's probably best, guys, if you're finding it very hard to see that hourly view, to focus in on the daily, focus in on the weekly. It will give you a better picture of how the structure is forming and where we are going in the slightly longer term. Everything's looking pretty good here for ELROND, so I haven't got any concerns at all on the future of this one. I'm going to leave that there, guys. So if you do find it useful and informative, hit the like button. I really do appreciate that. If you are new to the channel, do subscribe, tap the bell, select all notifications, and in doing so, you will be kept up to date with absolutely everything that we do here at Cheeky Crypto. With that said, done and out of the way, I hope everyone has a fantastic day, and I'll catch you all in the next one.